was Meghan Markle even doing at the Time100 Summit? Who invited her? Why? And how did she miss the memo of what this was supposed to actually be about? Someone please explain this nonsense. But first, I have some tea. So the Meg's appearance actually does make some degree of sense for the Time100 Summit because that particular event, the summit and the subsequent gala, is only 5 years old, I believe. And so right now, they're still kind of new in a way. Therefore, they are relying on people who have previously had covers or have previously made the list of Time's 100 most influential people in years past to come and be a bit of a draw for the summit and the gala to make it more of a thing and boost its profile a little bit. They're still kind of in that initial phase of making it a bigger deal. And since we know that Harry and Meghan were on the most influential people list in, I think it was 2021, and then Meghan made it on in 2018 because she joined the royal family, and that was a big deal. So that year, it really made sense. In 2021, we'll get into that in a moment. But remember, it was this picture, the hairstylist pic, which we were also distracted by these excessive extensions and hairdresser Harold pose that we completely forgot to mention at the time that it's yet another recreation of a Diana moment, which gives this a whole new tone. This particular cover. If you missed my video that came out just the other day about the history of Meghan Markle copying Princess Diana and Harry making weird comments about Princess Diana, I just compiled it in chronological order and I will link it for you at the top of the page, and I'll try to also put it in the description box if I remember. But what was most peculiar about her appearance at the Time100 Summit most recently is really who interviewed her, which isn't really the best term to describe Jessica Sibley's role here in this situation and what actually happened, but we will get into that in just a moment. It's clear the reason for Meghan's invitation was simply due to making the influential list in 2021, I think it was. But make no mistake, being on Time100 most influential people of the year, that list isn't necessarily always a good thing. It doesn't mean you're influential in a positive way, at least not automatically. Most people do tend to assume that it's in a positive way, especially people like Meghan and Harold. They were certainly not humble about it in any way, shape, or form, and the fact that it was due to their controversial status was completely lost on them. And when you look at the photo shoot from that context, it's actually pretty hilarious that they took these like power pics. But that year, it was probably more so due to the fact that they had done the Oprah interview and all the lies had come out, and it was controversial, and they were controversial, and that's what got them onto the list. But as an aside, just to prove my point, some of the most controversial selections for Time100's most influential people, gosh, that's a mouthful, can we abbreviate it somehow, include individuals like Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Nikita Khrushchev, Richard Nixon, Ayatollah Khomeini, and other controversial choices have included Lucky Luciano, and more recently some people have questioned the inclusion of Blake Lively due to her role in a legal dispute. And since they include historical figures that have often been responsible for immense suffering and destruction, that very fact of including them on this list has always drawn criticism since they started putting out this list. Because those people are seen as embodying extreme ideologies and actions, according to this, and yes, I would agree, but it's also people who are kind of on the extremes of culture and pop culture as well. Lucky Luciano's inclusion in the list in the early 2000s sparked outrage from Italian-American groups who argued that his selection romanticized organized crime. Recent lists have faced criticism for including figures like J.D. Vance, who has been criticized for his conservative political views and stance on various issues. Donald Trump has made it multiple times. Usually the president and anybody running for president makes it every single year, so that's a lot of people. And then, of course, the Blake Lively, the situation where she's super controversial right now because it would appear that she has lied about the Justin Baldoni problems. So the list itself is not automatically a positive influence. It is not saying that you are having a good influence just because you make it onto the list. However, from the magazine's point of view, it always leads to some degree of debate and conversation, and so it's actually good marketing for them to keep the list more diverse, I guess you could say, and to include people who are more controversial makes people talk about it more. But anyway, back to present times. Once invited, the Meg, ever the conceited control freak, requested that Jessica Sibley, the Time CEO herself, be the one to interview her, which is really code for facilitate her stage time. This is kind of bizarre for a few reasons, and keep in mind, everybody who was asked to be a keynote speaker had about a maximum of 20 minutes, 15 to 20, and some of them gave speeches, while some of them did do more of an interview format and a facilitated discussion type of a format, which is what Meghan opted for. But what's different about it is that she said she wanted to choose specifically who was going to interview her for this purpose, for this moment in time. And so this is a little bit strange because firstly, Jessica has openly said that the Meg asked her to do it. So she has revealed to the world that she was requested, which also means that it wasn't necessarily offered by the Time100 Summit organizers. They weren't like, hey, if you would like Jessica to interview you, this is an option. No, this was all the Meg's idea, and Meghan created this situation or asked for this. And it also tells us that it's not something that Jessica typically does for these types of spots. She's not typically in an interviewer role at the summit. She is the CEO of Time, so likely quite busy during this time. But she made room for this, which was gracious of her. So what we know that Meghan thinks she has a great stage presence. This is evidenced by the countless times that she has tried to get the microphone or forced her way on stage to speak at events that have nothing to do with her. And unfortunately for her, she overestimates her stage presence by a lot. Typically, she kind of rambles. It feels like she said nothing. It's word salad. She does the fake screaming thing where she's like, oh my God, this happened. Such a pet peeve. And so although Meghan thinks she's really good at speeches, we have seen that is not the case. Typically, her speeches are eye-roll worthy. And so perhaps she or her team, despite that, thought that it would be better to do an interview style rather than a speech. And maybe they thought it would make her seem more personable. I don't know. I think she likes feeling like people are asking her questions, and I think she likes the image that it creates, that she's being interviewed again rather than her getting up there and giving speeches. I think she's maybe started to understand that sometimes comes off like, when she did the One Young World, I think it was called, in the red suit. Oh, that mess. Because she said, she referenced herself so many times. I can't remember the number. I will put it on the screen. I will find it for you guys because it was out of control. So perhaps someone got through to her, or perhaps she wanted to avoid that and was trying to be a little bit more careful and thought this would be better. But to request Jessica does feel a little bit peculiar. It almost feels like she wanted to seem more important than all the other keynotes. And by having the CEO interview her rather than just some other journalist or somebody else in general, I think that Meghan thought it would signal status. I think that's why she went for Jessica. She always attempts these types of flexes that are just really bizarre and then they backfire. And I think just putting together everything we know about Meghan, I think it would be safe to infer that the reason why Meghan chose Jessica was to try to feel elevated as compared to everybody else who was a keynote speaker / having an interview. And this showed up because, for example, the CEO of Time doing one of their biggest events of the year with this summit, she's a busy woman. And after being asked to do this, she had to quick binge the With Love Meghan show from Netflix so that she could, be familiar with Meghan's work because she was asked to interview her. Which she said during the spot. She said that she had to binge it. And that tells us that Jessica isn't necessarily a fan of Meghan Markle. She hadn't watched the show before this whole thing began, this assignment. and neither had the audience, because at the beginning of this spot, she said, raise your hand if you've watched Meghan's show. And if you look at their faces in this moment, it was a little bit like, oh, not very many. And the crowd was silent. There was zero reaction. So it didn't seem like many people had watched the show, which is, a little bit embarrassing. But also Jessica made it clear and obvious that she had a script. She literally held up the cards and pointed to them and said, this is the script. It was her words. And the questions, as ever, had been approved by Meghan before taking the stage, because she always puts on like the bowling lanes, the boundaries, the bumpers of you can't ask anything except for these types of things. She also said that she had asked fellow interviewers backstage in the green room what they thought that she should ask Meghan, which tells me that Jessica had a hard time coming up with ideas that would be within those boundaries that Meghan had laid down. So likely it was supposed to be exclusively about Meghan's drab projects, which are not only so boring and basic that there's really not much to discuss about them at all, but also because none of it is performing exceptionally well or being reviewed exceptionally well. It's not like you're going to find much value in what Meghan has to say about these things anyway. Meghan, unfortunately, is more a lesson in what not to do or how not to do something than what to do, which is something that a successful CEO like Jessica Sibley would notice and find obvious. And so this is not the type of conversation that Jessica would find interesting or stimulating, and it really kind of showed. Like, she was really professional, she was super polite and very nice, but it was clear that Jessica wasn't particularly passionate about this or excited about this. She wasn't like enthused, but she was perfectly professional, which, to the point, it wasn't really an interview, because it was questions that were cleared beforehand and only about things that Meghan had approved. And so really this was just facilitating what Meg otherwise would have put into a self-aggrandizing speech. And I'm sure that Jessica saw through all the narcissism that was oozing out of Meghan's sweaty-looking face. So while Meghan thought it would be sort of a flex to be interviewed by Jessica Sibley rather than some run-of-the-mill journalist from Time or other representative of some kind, it did backfire, because it was clear that Jessica didn't really know that much about Meghan, and she did her best to research beforehand. But like I said, this is like probably one of the busiest times of year for Jessica. So, she could only dedicate some degree of time to it, or, maybe had somebody put together a little bit of a dossier to brief her on what Meghan had been up to, and then of course had the questions there, and it just came across like boring, like always. But we're going to dive deeper into the speech in an upcoming video, or in a different video. It might be up already. I'll link it if it is. I'm not sure what order I will get around to getting these out. Setting all that aside, Meghan clearly missed the entire point of the Time100 Summit, and instead mistook it, or perhaps just took advantage of it, and made it all about her like usual. I think Meghan was on a completely different page from the vision of this event. And the reason why this is so obvious that Meghan either missed or ignored the memo entirely about what this summit's vision or like mission really is because they themselves describe this summit and this gala as something that is supposed to be more about encouraging actions and inspiring solutions to address pressing issues within culture and within the world. The Time100 Summit is a summit organized by Time magazine to celebrate and recognize the Time100 list of the world's most influential people. And the Time100 branch is under the umbrella of Time, but it is operating as its own thing, separate from the regular Time magazine. It serves as a platform for global leaders, innovators, and changemakers to discuss pressing issues and inspire action. The summit includes a gala, which Meghan and Harry either weren't invited to or skipped, and a daytime summit featuring various speakers and panels. It's meant to provide a space for leaders to engage in discussions and share their perspectives on global challenges, and even includes a television special on ABC, and features a wide range of speakers from various sectors, including business, health, science, AI, and culture. The event attracts a diverse group of global leaders, entertainers, athletes, and innovators, but ultimately is meant to be kind of like a forward-thinking sort of a vibe. Like, I think they want it to be something that eventually feels like it's moving things forward and pushing boundaries a little bit and really forward thinking is what that verbiage says to me. And Meghan, her spot felt the opposite. It felt very inward looking and almost like backwards, because she just kept talking about stuff that she had just done and just completed and hyping it up like it was amazing. But she didn't really have anything that felt forward or outward, like out into the world. And Time 100 is not just like, we're going to interview interesting people that have been on our list and tell you more about them in a like sort of biographical sort of a way. That's not what it's meant to be. It is meant to be more inspiring, more influence, like forward thinking. That's the best way I can describe it. And Meghan's just didn't feel that way at all. She literally just used this as she would have any other interview, like something from a magazine, where she just dribbles on and on about herself and her nonsense, completely unaware that it's not really landing in the slightest, rather than thinking, what value can I bring to this moment? And I think that's the root of her unpopularity, quite frankly. We notice this and we dislike it. She had the privilege to go and speak there, the honor of being on the list at some point in the past and have a cover story, which certainly helped her profile. You can't deny this type of publicity does fool a lot of people into thinking that you're more important or popular than you are. And the right thing to do, the reciprocal respect expected in this situation, the proper etiquette would be to try to deliver value in the spirit of the event's themes and purpose or mission statement, should they have one. And we've seen her countless times ignore this basic rule, and this is no exception. Not even low-hanging fruit was utilized. She could have been like, working moms know exactly how it is when you have the pressure of a deadline or you're really focused, but then something comes up and you have to change gears into mom mode or something like that. She could have leaned into that sort of a vibe, or she could have talked about how we put a lot of expectations on ourselves as moms, you know, mom guilt and all that, but you also have a sort of similar dynamic in that when you're a business owner or running a business, like that feels like it also never stops and you're kind of always thinking about it. And with projects or businesses that you're trying to work on or run, you're kind of always having it at the back of your mind. And so you get used to not only juggling it and shifting expectations for yourself, but also working around your kid's schedule, for example. I don't know, she could have gone into it from so many different ways that felt more relatable and could have segued into value of like working moms needing better maternity leave time or longer maternity leave time, because she claimed to care about that years ago on the Ellen show and she's never talked about it again. And now that she's all mom boss, I'm a CEO, why isn't she incorporating that as something she cares about now? That she understands, allegedly understands how hard it is, which I don't believe she actually does because she hires so many people to help her regardless. Or later, she says that female-run businesses are underfunded and under-resourced. Well, talk about why. How so? Where's this data that you have about this? What is she doing besides her lame podcast to try to help that? What can people do? What are some organizations that she supports that she thinks are going to help this problem? She could have used her time to talk about something that did connect to value, but still tied back to her business era that she started this year in 2025. Even just discussing the sometimes bewildering feeling of learning the ropes to a new business or, you know, launching a business for the first time or whatever, something new. She can't even do that. So she had so many opportunities to focus this discussion in a different way or even tie it into an initiative that she allegedly cares about because she also is trying to be a philanthropist. But she failed. She failed to do anything that was of value or could have aligned with the mission statement of this event. Is it because she's narcissistic? Is it because she knows everything already? Did she actually miss the memo and not understand what this was? Did she not get it? Like, what happened? It's also rather tacky and really wasn't received well by not only the audience, but likely the greater community that was there to spend the whole time essentially using it as an advert for her projects since there was no value behind it. That's how it seems. Which you also have to think, how this will have a consequence later on with other big organizations wanting to have, or thinking about having Meghan come on for an interview or for a spot, that she's probably just going to turn it into herself and not deliver value. And people don't like that. It feels like a waste of time. She wanted her spot to be entitled My Journey. This is what Meghan chose. This wasn't anybody else's idea. This was Meghan's choice. She said she wanted it to be called My Journey, her keynote moment. So can someone please tell Meghan that her story or journey or version of events is never going to feel relatable in general, and it's never going to deliver interest or value because A, she's boring, B, she married a prince, and without that wedding, none of this would have been offered to her, so she's a Nepo wife, and C, she's not that good at the things that she has tried. It's like she's skipping the part where you're supposed to dedicate years of work to actually becoming good at whatever it is and achieve success in whatever it is you're trying to do. And then you get recognition, and then you come be a keynote speaker somewhere about it. And then you can offer the sage advice that you have earned once you have said advice. Meghan doesn't have any advice, and that's why she's not respected in these spaces. I'm interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining me for today's video. I'll be back with lots more this week, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Have a happy day, everybody. Bye.